Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, PTC Winchill to SAP Interfaces with Wincom for Winchill. My name is Alex Shinicki, Director of Marketing for TriStar, and I'm happy to introduce today's presenter, Todd Taneyhill, PTC Winchill Administrator at Magic Leap. TriStar has worked with Magic Leap for some time on helping them bring their innovative technologies to market faster, and I did want to thank Todd for taking the time to join us today. But before we jump in, I did want to mention that everyone who registered will receive a copy of this webinar to play on demand, and it will also be available on YouTube about an hour or so after the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to use that little chat window and leave them in there, and Todd will try to address them at the end of the session. Before I pass it over, I did want to kind of just go over TriStar briefly for any of you not familiar with us. We are a company that specializes in helping manufacturing companies adopt software systems and processes to enable better and more efficient product development. We achieve this by being the largest value-added reseller for PTC products and services worldwide, with headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona, and representatives and engineers throughout North America, Canada, and Mexico. We've been in business for nearly 25 years, and we're experts in CAD, data management, PLM, and product development. We also have an assortment of custom solutions tailored to specific requirements and needs. I encourage everyone to visit tristar.com after the presentation for more information. And with that, I'm going to pass over control to today's Winchill wizard, Todd. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Alex. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's safe and healthy. My name's Todd Taneyhill, as Alex mentioned. I work for a company called Magic Leap, which you may or may not have heard of. We are an augmented reality device, which you can see on the screen. We have a developer's edition out right now, and a commercial edition will be out in the next several years. Well, I can't really talk to the schedule, but so I've been doing Winchill since version 7 M10 back in 2004. I deployed it at Motorola. So I've been around the Winchill system for a long, long time. Today, what we're going to cover is the custom SAP interface. I want to say integration or interface to SAP. So here's just a list of subjects we're going to be covering. I'm going to start off with just a little general BOM process development. So we do have a CAD-driven BOM. So that means our Creo is going to produce our structures, generate our WT parts, etc. And that's for the primarily mechanical. The EE team, the electrical team, uses the Cadence tool, and they generate BOMs for PCBAs, and then we have an import functionality and a whole process around that, so that we now have what we call a design BOM, which is a complete mechanical electrical BOM. Also not shown on here is we do have the SUMA package, the supplier management package for Winchill. So we actually we manage all of our supplier data connected to our WT parts, and that data is also transferred to SAP. So this is kind of like an overview. The data goes to SAP, and that's what we'll be covering. And of course, then supply chain uses that data and then gets it to the vendor. So when I got here at Magic Leap 4 years ago this week, as a matter of fact, it was a fairly new startup, and the design BOM process it was just kind of a mess. And this is kind of like a summary of it, right? We had engineers sending stuff to partners, and then we had BOM people that were importing spreadsheets into SAP. Then they would send stuff to primary vendors, and then the two vendors would get confused on which particular prints, what rev, etc. And it was just a mess, right? So the production release were for quality documents also were kind of done separately. So this is all. It was all kinds of a big cluster where we decided to put a big project together to streamline it. All right, so what we did is we wanted everybody working together, obviously on the engineering end, that would go through Winchill, through this interface to SAP, and then some of the data that would be uploaded to encrypted cloud, and then that would be same data would be used by all partners and external vendors, so that everybody was working to the same version of the design. So this is an overview of the actual interface to SAP from Winchill. So on the left-hand side, of course, is Winchill. And as Alex mentioned, Wincom is the partner of TriStar, and actually they've partnered with PTC as well these days. That they have some off-the-shelf things with the extensions that you can see in, I think, Winchill 11.2, I think, 11.1. They're out of the box, stuff like that, or you can get them to do customizations, particularly, just for you, which is what we had done, right? So, and they're out of Barcelona, Spain, by the way. So, but what they did was they produced code that would process a structure and generate what's called XML files are residual, but they connect through what's called a WSDL. Again, that's more of the SAP side, so that's web services description language. So basically, they're communicating through this WSDL functionality that produces what are called iDocs in SAP, and those are processed, and then they are communicate all of the material master data, the BOM data, all document management stuff, and of course any changes, etc., through into the SAP plant, engineering plant and production plant if it's a production release. So this is the overview of the architecture. Notice on the right hand side the SAP S4 HANA. That was our original. I think we're a couple of packs above that now. The reason we had to go through this path is the TIBCO stuff that PTC offers wasn't, that version of SAP wasn't even on their roadmap for 2 years, right? So we couldn't wait, right? So Wincom came in, we generated all the requirements, and of course they produced the code and we tested and implemented it. Since the original implementation, we've probably enhanced that thing 20 times over the last 4 years, making it much more robust, communicating more and more data to SAP, and they've done a fantastic job with response to our requests. So for Winchill, of course, everybody should know they have we have life cycle states, right? These are they're a little old, but primarily still the ones we use. Work in progress, pre-release, design released, and then of course production release, and then we have a phase out and obsolete. Well, that maps to what's called material status in SAP, and you can see those in the chart below. So a Z1 would be a work in progress, Z2, pre-release, Z3, etc. So those material statuses also dictate what you can do with that material in SAP. So for example, Z1 you can't order, right, through SAP ordering mechanisms. Z2, I think you can do a limited order, and the same with the Z3 with a larger quantity. So design release is like a advanced prototype, right? So it's a pre-release would be like just a prototype. Design release is they think this is the design is ready to go, and you can order 1,000 of them versus you can only order 100 of the pre-released. So you can see that the purchasing, matter of fact, there you go. You can see it in the third. You can purchase with an E meaning an error, then you get warnings for the other two, and of course production release you can do full ordering, etc. So they also do different recipes over in SAP. We primarily do them now in Winchill. Originally they were in SAP, but now they're in Winchill. We do save as, and then we'll send those different recipes, meaning different configurations of the product to SAP. Also, when we send this data over, not only are you getting material status, you're getting supplier information, you're getting URLs to documents, so you actually can go back to for example, a spec in Winchill to actually see the original spec itself. It's a link. It's not we're not storing any document data as far as the physical document in SAP. Next. So one of the biggest issues we ran into when we first implemented this was the fact that SAP can only have a single revision as the primary, I guess, I'm in part my SAP knowledge here because it's very limited. But you can only have one rev as like the latest rev, and where we do when we do multiple builds with our products, of course we may use rev A on build 1 and rev B on build 2, or we may want to switch them out. So what we had to do is for any data that we sent to SAP before going to a production release state, we appended the rev, right? So here it says R01, that should be RA. We got rid of the numeric revs a while back. But so when you send something at WIP or pre-released or design release, you have the number and then underscore RA. The next time you send it, if you'd revved it, it would be RB. Of course, the life cycle it would match up with the material status, etc. So that was unfortunately. That was something that it was kind of like a workaround. We actually didn't even know it was going to work, but it actually worked very well. And we still do that to this day. Now, once we reach a production lifecycle state, that's when we drop the rev. So now that can be the primary, the latest quote unquote version in SAP in the engineering plant. And then that gets actually extended, what they term extended, into the production plant. So as far as the data being lifecycle state changes in Winchill, we use our standard promotion, right, just like everybody else does, with proper approvals, notifications, etc. And when we send that data to SAP with the promotion request, the actual change number is the promotion number. So you can always track back to what promotion, who approved it, who initiated it to the change in SAP. And note that we don't send BOM data with a promotion, right? So we're only sending lifecycle state changes or material status changes to SAP with the promotion. The reason is because we actually use a manage baseline to manage our BOMs. Now, why do we do that? We do that because we maintain maybe 2 or 3 build baselines at a time, right? So we might be modifying, build 1, build 2, build 3. May have 3 different configurations that we'll want to send over. So we send all BOM data related to those builds via a baseline. Of course, there's a process which I'll show you in a minute, and of course there is an approvals and notifications. And again, as the change number in SAP would be then the baseline number, again, so that you have tracking of who approved this BOM send, who initiated it, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry. So this is kind of like a general process we use. So we create the baseline. We put the data in there. We send it to SAP, and if we think that it's ready to go, we'll then promote the data and excuse me, so that the lifecycle, the material status changes in SAP. And again, we can go through this cycle, but more than likely we're going to be in the send SAP update baseline cycle for a while, right? So you build it, you determine if the baseline is ready with the BOM. If not, you add parts, delete parts, revise parts, etc., until you get what you want. Then you send it. And once you get that, you promote, and in there we might promote to Z2 for some of the items. Right? This is not a fully correct process flow, but in general, we promote, we update the baseline, we send, etc. Until we get to design release, where we actually send a lot of the quality data, and that's where we promote to the Z3. And then, of course, we go from Z3 or design release to production ready. Now, again, if it's not production ready, we revise the data. We go back through that circle a little bit. Once you, of course, get to Z4 or production ready, you can have an ECN, and that goes back. You would revise the part. It would go back to Z1, then to which would be WIP, and then back to design released. Excuse me. And then, of course, you have a phase out and obsolete lifecycle states as well. So how do we send data to SAP? So there's a function, and basically you would pick and that, by the way, 7,000 is our assembly numbers. So basically what you would do is you're going to go ahead and select the actions button, and this is all part of the customization that Wincom developed for us. And there's a send to SAP function for any part in the system. right? So you could actually send, just a single part, piece part, if you wanted to, and that's where you see at the bottom, you just use the selected part, right? If I wanted to just send a housing because I wanted to get the supplier data over there because the BOM isn't ready, but I want to get the supplier data over there, something like that. But you can then either use an existing baseline, which that's the maintained baselines I was talking earlier that we might have on, for a build that we send over and over again as we update it. So that would be an existing one, or you can create one on the fly. That would be the create baseline. That's just going to send the latest structure that for that part in a baseline to SAP, and it's gonna process that baseline just off the latest versus an existing baseline, what could have different revs in the baseline. So if I had a Rev A that for an existing build, I still want to keep that, but Rev B is the latest, you would use the existing baseline. So if you send just the selected part, which actually I have disabled now, we've actually disabled that functionality, but again, it's built into the customization where I can turn it back on if I wanted to. That's only just going to send the material status or material master over instead of, it's not going to send any BOM data. The reason being is you're not sending the BOM, right? You're doing a BOM by a baseline. This is just sending the all the related information, supplier information, document information, any related quality data to SAP just for that singular part. So if you do use a baseline, this is just a very simplified version of the approval steps. So the BOM manager, and we've got several. Not every engineer is a BOM manager. They can't send bill of materials. It's a very highly restricted action. As a matter of fact, the action I showed you here, go back here. This action here can only be seen by the BOM manager. So built into the customization is a list of users that I can grant by group called send to BOM or send to SAP. I can add that is controlled by that group. So whoever I add to that group can see that action. A standard user cannot. But again, so those BOM managers, they prepare the baseline or they select the top level WT part for the substructure they want to send. And they select send to SAP, and then they have an option of adding a reviewer so that it can be reviewed before any approvers get the approval. And again, all these have reject options, right? So the reviewer can say no, that there's something wrong. You need to relook at the structure or the baseline, and then the BOM manager starts back over. Then we get the three primary players that have to do the approvals. Of course, EE, ME, and NPI. Once all three of those approve, the SAP data is sent, the IDocs are processed. And by the way, so on the SAP side, there are some catches as far as the IDoc failures. So our SAP team has some warnings and stuff that if something doesn't process correctly, maybe, and that happened at the beginning, some of the data sent was incorrect, or there was a character issue. Maybe it's not like special characters can cause problems. It wasn't really for Winchill, it was actually on the SAP side, but still, we could then resend the data after correcting any data on the Winchill side. Once that data was processed, and then of course we had purchasing, sourcing, and configuration management that did all their tasks before configuration management sent the data to the suppliers. As far as the BOM data, remember they can still get the drawings, everything from the encrypted cloud. We're actually working on an automated process for that after our Winchill upgrade in November. So hopefully maybe next year I can show you that. But right now, the CM sends the BOM from SAP to the suppliers. So this is recently added, and this is again some Wincom magic. So the BOM preparation for the managers now have the ability to run reports directly on the baseline without going to a report, entering the baseline number, directly from the first task in the workflow. And this is it, you'll see in front of you. So they can run this missing supplier part report, a BOM overwrite report, which basically an assembly duplicate line report, which that's caught several issues. And since we implemented this a few months ago, one second. Thank you. So yeah, so these basically, this is a Wincom robot call that I can feed the primary object, which is the baseline, and it will generate the URLs, which basically is, when you select on it, it runs that report with that baseline number as the entry. It can take maybe 30 seconds or 40 seconds to run a large report, especially if it's a large, if it's like a full BOM. The missing summa report may take a minute, and it'll open in another browser. The second part of this task is selecting the baseline send type. So this is primarily for metrics for our stuff, for our purposes, for our dashboarding. The different types of BOM sends. We send a lot of valuation BOMs versus a baseline BOM, which is more of like a primary BOM, and then we've got some log lead items in there, which actually is a very good usage for generating long lead item dashboards for our both supply chain and our engineering group. The other Wincom specialty here is this compare to baseline. So basically, you can enter any previously sent baseline, and for example, you can see the number at the top here for this one is 1123, and I'm comparing it against 1122. So I can actually generate a report between those two BOMs, and it will tell me what the differences are from the last thing I changed. So if 1122 went to SAP, I can now say what I'm going to be changing SAP with this current send. If you do that, it will go off into a part of the workflow that executes it, and then the user actually receives an email with a Excel spreadsheet that has all of the add change, even down to ref designated changes, right? So it's a very thorough BOM check, and that really, at that point, it gives the BOM manager the opportunity to go in and modify the baseline and regenerate the comparison report. So you can do that multiple times until you get exactly what you want, and then you send it on for approval. So again, these are two additional Wincom customizations designed just for Magic Leap that aren't really related to the Wincom interface or the interface for the SAP, but it really produces a lot of really good data, especially sent to our approvers so that they know what's being changed. So here's an example of one of the XML files that are generated for sending this data. So there's two files that are generated for an assembly, a material master, and a BOM XML file. If it's just a part, without any children, it's the only thing it's generated is material master. You can see in here there's a bunch of different things, units, of course, material statuses. I think we have a BOM check functionality which actually we can send to SAP, and it will produce a BOM check against what's in SAP versus what's coming in. So it doesn't actually make the changes, but it produces spreadsheets and reports that tells us what the difference is. And of course, there's there's the rev, change number, et cetera, et cetera. So, and there's some supplier information. Say it's and by the way, this is not just one supplier. This can be multiple suppliers. You can have up to 4 right now. We have designed into the system. This is the second part of that XML file. This is where the related tooling disciplines, which is basically if there's tooling required, what discipline is it, ME, OE, or versus EE. So those items are used primarily by SAP just for classification. Also, these are all the documents that you can include the URLs to. So you have the PPAP, which I'd mentioned earlier, right? A BOM change log, a path, and then there's the actual baseline link itself. And then here is a Rev A of the PDF for this particular assembly. So, you can very easily go back to Winchill with these URLs directly to get to the actual documents you may need if so desired. So the only difference between the BOM XML obviously has the actual BOM section, right? So here is a BOM section example, right? So it's got how what the quantity is. Notice the underscore RAs as I mentioned. So this was a work in progress Z1 assembly at Rev A and had all these parts. One I didn't show in here, I probably should have, is if it is a PCBA, all of the ref designators are called out in different line items. So if I have a resistor, and I've got or R1 through R10, it calls them out in sub items. It's called sub items underneath it. So this this is very, very robust in passing over not just mechanical data but electrical data as well. Here are some of the robot calls that I use in my workflows. So for example, the promotion robots, right? So they give me a bunch of switches that if I want to send material masters only, which is actually I have turned on, versus just sending targets, right? So that's only going to send items that are being promoted, because of course you may have an assembly with several items underneath it. You're promoting while one's already at the target state. You only want to send the targets, then you can do that. Then there's the manage baseline, and again, there's all kinds of different options in here based off of what data you want to send. So I've got multiple workflows with different switches depending on what our process requires. Also for ECNs, it also works for ECNs as well. And then there's some optional stuff down here where these are all the different possible different calls for these robots, and they actually it makes the configuration of the workflows very, very easy, and it gives you a lot of options. So if your requirements change, you can usually change those pretty quickly as well. Alex, I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd. We will hold for questions now. If anyone wants more information about Wincom, has some questions afterwards, I do encourage you all to visit tristar.com or contact your representative. It does look like we do have one question, Todd.
Yes, I see it. Yeah, I see it. Are you using the NPM link? So we looked at it. Early on. We actually even had it installed, and we started to look at it. It just didn't do what we wanted it to do. I think it was just for the benefits that it gave us. We just didn't see it. By the way, if you do something like that and then you don't purchase the license, like if you don't renew the license and you go to do an upgrade, the upgrade won't let you do it because you have NPM link installed. So it says, hey, you don't have any licenses for this, so you can't upgrade. So unfortunately, you have to go to PTC and yell at them, and they'll eventually give you a temporary license so you can do your upgrade. So no, we're not using multiple views. We looked at that as well. Again, it wasn't. It just didn't give us the benefit that we were looking for. Again, this is all engineering driven. So at this point, no, that may come back into play because we're, like I said, we just released a developer edition like last year. Consumer edition will be out for a while, so we probably will get back to that. I would think. Let me expand this a little bit more. Let's see, multiple views. I know PIs. To convert iDocs, I believe so, because the XML are actually is just for troubleshooting, right? So the way Wincom is connecting through to SAP, yeah, I think it's at PI is what you're referring to. Again, I'm not a SAP person, but I know that the XML files aren't actually being generating the iDocs, right? The XMLs are being generated by the process that's going to the iDocs for us to be able to troubleshoot them. Am I correct? Yes, this is definitely all WT part driven, right? This is all, we don't, you can't send a CAD structure, right? This is all WT part driven, absolutely. How do you ensure you are sending pristine data to SAP from Winchill? Does your BOM compare tool do that for you? Yes, and that's why we have, if you saw the those links, and that's why you can generate the difference between the last BOM you sent and the current BOM you sent, and that's why we have that stuff in there, because yes, we've had problems with overwriting data that we didn't want, and we had the duplicate line thing was a problem for a while as well. But that's why we put that functionality in there, so that, you know, the BOM managers, and the BOM managers are excellent. I mean, they know what they're doing, right? They, you know, for the most part, you know, they don't make many mistakes, but luckily they do follow the process where they actually do that compare report functionality to make sure that the data is good. How do you keep track of baselines? Is it by name, naming convention? So we have a numbering convention, right? So and the name itself is actually takes the name of the part when it's sent. But we actually have the predefined baselines. We have an attribute on a baseline called build, and you actually can select the attribute like PEQ1. That's the value for the build. So you know, most of the time, anything that's generated on the fly, the baseline should just pick up a number, right? So it's going to be B for build baseline dash and then 10 characters, right? So because the change numbers in SAP are 12 characters, so that gives us our 12 characters. So, but that the name itself, you know, especially for, you know, predefined baselines, we have like, you know, PEQ 1A, you know, et cetera, and then you would set the value of the attribute to that build. Thank you for your welcome. I have two questions. One, what's the material type? What material type can be created in SAP? I'm not sure about the SAP question. We actually send what's called extended material group to SAP, where we prefix like a three character prefix to the number. So we have probably 40 different extended material groups. Like for example, con would be connector, or ASM would be assembly. I don't know how that maps in as far as material type in SAP. I'm sorry. How Winchill reserve the material part number? Oh, that's a good question. I probably should have put this in here. So again, as part of the customization for that Wincom built for us, we actually are generating the material, the material numbers directly from SAP. So when someone checks in a CAD and generates a WT part, if it's a CAD part, it'll go and it'll say SAP, give me a 3000 number, right? So so we are actually generating those numbers directly from SAP into Winchill, and then of course that creates the material master in SAP, so that when we send that IDOC, that data, the material master is already there, right? So again, it's with the appending of the rev, there's some code in SAP that carries forward, you know, certain information from the material master without the _A to the _A. So that's all on the SAP side. But that was a good question. I'm sorry I didn't cover that. You have more than one active baseline for a specific revision? Yes. As a matter of fact, we've got several. You know, we may have two different build baselines with the Rev B in it, right? So because they have different top level revs, right? So, I'm sorry, numbers. Because one might two, they both use the same Rev B subcomponent, and so yes, you can have two baselines with the same rev in it. Absolutely. Do you have any other connector for? I don't know what I don't know what that SAP. Do I have any other connector? No. This is, I mean, like between the send to SAP functionality and the number generators, those are the only connections we have to SAP. What order of magnitude cost of Winchill robots and custom code? Let's see. I since I've been here, you know, with the the enhancements, you know, I have a budget. I think I've spent like 50 grand over the last 3 years, maybe more. But not you know, not like, hey, it didn't cost me $2 million. I'll tell you that right now, right? The good thing about Wincom is they'll give you an estimate, and you know, say they give me, you know, it's going to be 40 hours, but it only took them 30. They only bill you 30, right? You know, it's not like, okay, 40 hours, 40 hours. They bill you for the actual work. So I can't say enough good things about Wincom. They're very good. Matter of fact, I'm just talking with them today about another enhancement, and they're very responsive, especially when we first started out, and you know, we would have, you know, production issues where the code needed change quickly. You know, they'd turn that around. Of course, they're in Barcelona, so they're 6 hours ahead. So usually by if I pinged them in the afternoon, by the time I got back to work the next morning, that a new version would be there for me to test. So is this pushed to SAP only upon release? No, you can. This is a BOM send on demand, right? So when we do promotions, I automatically send the material status changes over. But as far as the BOM send, those are on demand by the BOM managers. So this is in the release, the production release, of course, is done also by the promotion as well with a baseline. But no, this is a on demand change. I think we looked at trying to maybe send it on on a regular cadence automatically, but the SAP team didn't like the idea of, okay, well, it's just coming over without anybody approving it or looking at it beforehand, and they didn't like that, so that didn't go very long. How long did it take to put the new process in place from the old one? That was about a good 6 to 8 months. It's because we really struggled with the problem on the SAP side where you couldn't have more than one quote unquote material master part number. So without the underscore RA or RB, and we came up with that solution, and of course we didn't know if it was going to work. It's like, well, if it doesn't work, we'll go go back and try it again. But it actually did. So I'd say about 6 to 8 months for that. Our phase 1 was what we called it, because we're on like phase 3 now, because we do continuous improvement, process improvement, not just sending the Winchill, but in general as well. STS Styline. What's Styline? Don't know what that is. SYTLINE. Do have a lot of customized products, or are they predominantly standard products? You mean our products? If you're meaning Magic Leap, this is a very highly customized product, right? This is our, we're a startup AR device company, right? Yeah, this is we don't have standard products. I'm not sure. But yeah, no, we've got one primary product, and it's called the Magic Leap 1. If you saw it on the first slide, you can Google it. And that's our primary product. Do you manage your PLM workflow in Winchill or in SAP? Everything's in SAP. I'm sorry, in Winchill. All of our PLM workflow stuff is in Winchill for sure. Matter of fact, I don't know of many any type of workflows in SAP. I'd have to ask my SAP person.
Very good questions. I did want to thank you again for joining us today. Todd, thank you so much for taking the time. Those are awesome questions. If you enjoyed this presentation, everyone, we definitely encourage you to share the complimentary recording you'll receive shortly with your colleagues on social media. If you have any questions after this, you want to take a deeper dive, you can visit tristar.com. There's going to be some good information on Wincom, the extensions, the applications, as well as some of the custom configurations that you can do with Wincom. Or simply contact your TriStar representative. With that, I think that's all the questions and time we have for today. So again, thank you everyone, and thank you, Todd. Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone.
Quite welcome. Thanks, everybody.